welcome to Fred's podcast, and we're absolutely delighted to have comedian Abi Roberts.
Good morrow.
Comedian.
Yes,
All right, guys.
Well,
Yes, I made the mistake of washing my hair this morning.
Oh.
It should have its own agent.
Yeah.
It's like coral. it just like expands. You know what I mean? Anyway, it's very 80s, very appropriate.
You've
Yes.
got more hair than I ever had.
Yeah.
I don't want to rub it in.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
Quite brutal, but thank you.
One
Sorry,
thing
guys.
that really surprised me, actually, Abby, which I didn't associate with you at all,
Yeah.
was your study of opera.
Yes. Oh,
I was when I saw that, I thought, is that real? Is that right?
Is
what
that
took you to
just
that?
Abby's? Is that just
Yes.
Abby's in her imagination?
Yeah, exactly.
In a past life.
Yeah.
Yes, it's all true. I was classically at school, and then was going to go to a music college.
Right.
Got into music college, and then decided, probably actually for the best, that I would be better off going to uni and then just sort of, because it's very disciplined, isn't it? Classical
Very,
opera.
I think.
And then, weirdly, though, I found myself, when I studied Russian, going to the Moscow Conservatoire
That's unbelievable.
to study opera. Yeah, for a year with a Russian opera singer.
Oh
so
my
it was,
God.
Yeah, so it was all. It's music's always been in my family. Actually, weirdly, not just classical. On my
Right.
dad's side, very much not classical. He was
What was he?
session guitarist.
Was he
know,
really?
What was he?
Yeah. So
Oh,
worked
right.
for the Melody Maker, and in fact,
Oh.
I've just reconnected with him after, God, how many years? 23 years
Oh my God.
Well, good for you.
of sort of being estranged, if that's
Right.
the right
Okay.
word.
Right.
Is he still
You know,
playing?
the way. Huh?
Is he still playing? I mean,
No,
He's
really sadly not. But I mean, he
Right.
was. He's Welsh, so
Right.
all his music, I'm trying to think who was his next door neighbour. It was Dave Edmonds was his best friend.
Seriously?
Dave
Okay.
Edmonds.
Can
I
you
know
hear
it's
me?
so weird, and we've never spoken about this, have we? This musical side, it's very weird.
Yeah.
And then when he was in London, when we moved to London,
Yeah.
when I was about 4, then he was in with the whole Carnaby Street. He was like Eric Burden was one of his best
Oh, wow.
mates.
Wow.
So he was sort of Georgie
Wow.
Fame. So
Okay.
it was very much, and I've got a picture of him with Chuck Berry.
Oh, that's
They're
cool.
just chatting about the guitar, and I'm like, and he gave me
amazing.
he gave me the original when we met,
Oh,
and I was like,
Oh,
oh my
wow.
God, it was
Good for
very,
him.
you know what I mean? You sort of think, oh Christ, I think I'm going to lose it
Yeah.
in the middle of this restaurant,
Wow.
Does he miss it? Does he miss it terribly? If you
Yeah, it's do you know something? It's one of those it's that weird thing of I don't like to bring it up because I think actually
It opens up.
it's been so long and he was so good, so talented that it's actually, and I all his musical tastes. I mean, I used to listen to Ry Cooder when I was like
Oh, cool.
13.
Right,
I say to all my friends, listen to this slide guitar, isn't it wonderful? They'd be like, what? What are you talking about?
Right.
You're mad. And they were right about that part. But so it's sort of one of those strange things we share a love, obviously love of, and he passed a lot on to me. But I know it's painful for him because
Yeah,
he
it must
then,
be.
when him and my mum split, he then went and led a different life
Oh, I
away
see.
from
Right.
with somebody who wasn't musical at all.
Right. Okay.
Was
okay.
it my musical as well then?
My mum, pretty musical, yeah, not in the same league as my dad,
No.
but just one of those things, when people kind of separate, get divorced, people have different, what's the word? Different sort of lifestyles. I mean, my dad was very rock and, I mean, he was properly bad boy. You know what I mean?
Right.
He'd come in at 5 a.m. and say to my mother, "Oh, I met Gloria Gaynor tonight." And then 2 days later, there'll be a phone call. "Hello, is Dr. Roberts there, please?" And my dad had just told her he was Dr. Roberts.
Right.
As in, well,
The
Dr.
Dr.
Robert wasn't it the Beatles?
Yes,
Should we
exactly.
say a drug provider,
Right.
just for a laugh? And then
Right.
she wrote. So he was quite. I imagine quite a difficult person to be
Yes.
to be married to with two daughters.
Yeah. So was he professional? He made his living from that, yeah?
Yes, made his living from that, and
good for him.
also and journalism. So
Right.
he was sort of like and so a bit of both really.
Right.
And what was the name he
and
worked under? What was his work name?
Oh, Chris Roberts, Christopher,
Really?
and weirdly,
I'll look that up.
there is
Yeah.
a Chris Roberts who's I think worked many years later on the Melody Maker, and maybe NME. But so it's quite weird because when I googled my dad, I was like,
Yeah.
when I googled, I was like, Chris Roberts. I was like, oh god, that's not him. I mean, that's so it's just that's not him because he's 35.
Yeah.
And he's wearing skinny jeans, unless I'm younger than I claim to be, which is definitely true. Shush. But it was So there's a lot's happened in my life over the last 3 years, which has been quite a sort of avalanche of things to get my head round.
Very quickly, I mean,
Yes.
if you were growing up in that musical, atmosphere, what took you to comedy? What was it that? So the obvious thing is you'd go into singing, or you'd be
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Something,
Yeah.
I could never. Very lazy. It couldn't. I'm ashamed to say I never picked up a guitar, which is awful. But vocally, from a very young age, me and my sister and my dad and my granddad, because my Welsh gramps Bob was in a quartet, a barbershop. So you know that sort of close harmony. So we'd be there going da 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 da, doing all this stuff, and which is really good. But never, not musical instruments wasn't my thing. And then, but my dad, though it sounds like a bit of a sort of like I am not worthy of. My dad was very funny, very quick-witted, sort of great mimic and everything. So I think it was always there, the comedy, even though that came sort of a bit later on in life, actually, when I sort of, and that's where my husband comes in, because he became my manager.
That's right.
And said, I think stand-up comedy's your thing, Abs.
Right.
Because it's unusual to be.
This was Terry.
Terry,
wasn't it?
my darling Terry,
Yeah.
who passed end of 2018, said, well, you've kind of got a choice. Yeah, music's, it's great, but actually it's unusual for a woman to get up and just kind of go, and for male comedians to sort of, I was told actually by a couple of promoters, the male act, they can you go after them because they don't want to follow you.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Really?
I had that a few times.
Because
without sort of blowing my own trumpet. But
have you seen those comments from Christopher Hitchens, who believed that women couldn't be funny? Have you ever seen?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have. Yeah, that's where we sort of part. That's where we sort of part company.
I'm not surprised.
Strange thing to say.
F off, you cheap bastard.
Yeah.
He didn't meet me.
No.
I think that's I think that's really. I mean, it's one of those things where I understand intellectually where that comes from, because when you grow up with and you're around a table full of blokes, which I was with my dad and my uncle and my various their friends. It's great because men are very quick with the banter,
Right.
So it's not to say that women can't be,
No.
but my God, if you want to keep up with a table full of journalists, musos who are lightning quick with the puns and the gags and whatever, you better up your game, So there's I mean, I think he's wrong, but I can see from an intellectual sort of thing where he's coming from,
Yeah.
Right, okay.
There is also this inbuilt, and I admit to having it occasionally. We went to the comedy club and there was a female comedian on that night. Do you remember?
Was that Tony McGrath?
Yes, Tony McGrath. And,
Titania. The character.
Titania, sorry.
Andrew Doyle's character.
Yes.
Yes.
She came on, and I remember. I mean, subconsciously, I thought, "Oh no, this is not going to be very funny. This is not." Do you know? I don't know why. I just thought that. I just made my mind up. And she was brilliant.
She was great.
She was absolutely brilliant. Really, really good. So you really have to check yourself sometimes with these inbuilt attitudes that you have.
Yes,
You really,
check
you really
yourself
do.
before you wreck yourself is one Terry's favourite expressions.
Check
I'm
yourself
like,
before you wreck yourself.
like before I go on stage, I'm like, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Right, go.
That's true.
But also, character without being what's the word? Being critical of like character comics. It is easier to do than, because if I'm doing stand up as myself and you go on, you're essentially, there's no armour. There's no sort of like, so you get on and you do your stuff and you whatever. And then if you've got it's basically, you've only got yourself and the mic and that.
Yeah.
work ticking over. Whereas if you've got like, when like with Kathy Crunt, when I created her, the newsreader, I was like, oh Christ, what have you done? Because as soon as you put a wig on and you know what I mean, it's a whole different thing.
But you could say
Discipline.
anything, can't you? It's like
Yeah.
the people who do Family Guy. One of their things is and
Yes.
Simpsons, because it's a character. You can make those characters
Yes.
say anything, do
They
anything.
can die on screen, alive in 5 seconds later.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
So the
Yeah,
wig thing
yeah.
is, I get that completely.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
There is freedom. You're right to with
is.
the character where you can sort of go, hello, I'm going to say something, and this is what Abby believes,
Yes.
but I'm Kathy Crunt. So
Yes, exactly.
there's a little bit of a gap.
One question. We're going to go to a clip in a minute, but I just want to quickly ask you a question. Do you think American stand-up is pushes the barriers more than British stand-up
At the moment.
At the moment.
At the moment, yes, I think there are a lot braver, lot braver stand-ups, particularly over with the shit show of the last two and a half years.
Yeah.
People
exactly.
really preparing. Jim Breuer, good example. Jim's fantastic.
Right.
If you haven't seen him, Jim
I
Breuer.
haven't.
I don't know.
Oh God, very very physical, very kind of like right up my alley. Where he's just very like, oh my God, oh let's get the jabs. And he just these wonderful like crazy faces. He's good. I think, to be honest with you, we're seriously we're lacking,
We are,
particularly the last 2.5 years
Absolutely.
with not just COVID, but the woke stuff and all that.
Yeah.
Where
Well,
people have just gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I was watching Patrice O'Neill, who's one of my favourites. I really love Patrice O'Neill.
Yeah.
He could. There's no way he could do 90% of his
Not
stuff
at the moment, no.
at the moment.
No.
He just
Yeah.
couldn't. Despite the fact it's brilliantly funny.
Yeah, I'm seeing some people now who I've gigged with. There's a guy called Tom Stade, who's a Canadian, been around for a long time. I mean, as in he's a proper, absolute like stalwart of the comedy scene. Came over, I think, in the early 90s, if I remember rightly, and stayed in the UK. But he now is starting to say, guys, I've had enough. I'm not even going to pretend to edit anything at all. And so all power to his elbow.
Absolutely.
I just wish people had said it a lot longer ago.
Been very same as
It's been slow, hasn't it?
Very slow.
Really
It's
slow.
painful, man.
Yeah, it's like
Fucking
watching
Yeah.
people drive.
Yeah. We're just going to play a clip of Kathy Grunt so people know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I love
when
Kathy
you mentioned Kathy's. Here we go, quickly.
Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Crunt, and this is BGTV News. I've been triple jabbed, and you should be too. I don't know if that's morally right, but I have to say it because I've just booked 2 weeks at an all-inclusive resort in Mauritius. The time is 5:30 Ukraine, and here are the headlines. A woman has been found guilty of lewd conduct in a public place. According to witnesses, 45-year-old Angela Bostwick, a painter and decorator from Grimsby, exposed her penis in Lidl before attempting to have intercourse with a box of Dairy Lee Dunkers. A horrified mother of 2 said, "I couldn't believe my eyes, the filthy bastard." Ms. Bostwick has been sentenced to 3 months in the ladies' wing of Grimsby Prison because it's the compassionate thing to do.
It is so true.
It is true.
It's so
Absolutely
true.
right. Who's that guy on just recently on Channel 4? And he took his clothes off and started playing the piano with his cock.
Yeah, on Channel 4.
Yeah, on the Friday night, the Friday Night Live. They've sort of, haven't they, resuscitated it from.
Have they?
And Ben Elton, was all like, "Oh, Friday Night Live's back," and I was like, "I know what this is going to be. It's going to be woke
A
central,
woke fest.
Yeah, it will
exactly.
be
woke fest,
yeah.
And
not people like me,
No.
Tanya McGrath, Alistair Williams. All people that would just go,
Yeah.
"Well,
Yeah, exactly.
establishment."
Exactly.
Which we need. It's
No.
really strange. Yeah, we
Well,
need
Exactly. We were talking to a
Clear out.
musician earlier, Todd Sharpville, and it's the same kind of thing, which is comedy and the arts should be at the forefront of kicking up the dust
Should be.
Yeah.
and making people think
Yeah.
and pointing the finger but it's all become incredibly compliant, don't you think? And really
Yeah.
vanilla, particularly very in terms of music and comedy, very vanilla over here.
Very vanilla and very sort of puritanical. Like I did a gig, just like a new material, to try some stuff out last week, and all the younger comics, is really interesting, were doing stuff and saying things like LGBT plus T plus because that's the right thing to think. And it was like it was a script that they weren't doing it for the audience, they were doing it for their mates, so that their mates back going, correct, you've done the right thing. There's a weird Maoist censorship thing going on. I don't know whether you guys have found that in what you do.
Yeah, we have.
Well, when we went to the comedy club a few weeks ago, we met a comedian called Chris McGlade.
Oh yes, I know Chris. Yeah, great. Yes.
And he was talking about, he did an audition in Soho prior to this gig that we saw him at, and he did a few. And he's from Middlesbrough. He's got a very strong Middlesbrough accent, and he was talking about him shopping and going down to the Chinky, for instance, which is what all his mates called the local Chinese restaurant. That's what it was. And after his audition, the bloke came up and said, I'm afraid we can't use you. He said, why? He said, well, you're using expressions like cheeky. It's just not, that's not going to happen. Can you say something like chunky?
At which point he said, no, because the joke wouldn't make fucking sense. Absolute weapon.
I know.
But you know something? That's not unusual. I had that experience. I mean, it was over 2 years ago when I talk about my mother, who I was very close to, and when I'm talking about her, I say, my mother had more pairs of slippers than a mosque, and it used to get a really good a sort of and then a laugh.
Yeah.
And somebody came up to me, a comedian, went, that really what you should say? I said, have you been inside the doorway of a mosque? There are lots of pairs of slippers. So it's correct. Yes. You know, it's not. I'm not trying to sort of like. I'm not trying to make enemies. No, I'm just observing.
It's observational.
Yes. Yeah.
It goes to the J.K. Rowling thing, doesn't it?
Yes.
Which is just stating what it is, as
opposed
to what we wish it was.
Yeah. And I was just thinking about 2020, and I on my pad, and I just had 2020. What a fucking shit show. That's literally just what a fucking shit show. Just in that sort of sense. Just that's it. That sums it up. Because do you remember, guys? It wasn't just the Rona. It wasn't just COVID nonsense. Suddenly in June we had the J.K. Rowling stuff, where she came out and wrote the article, and then was just absolutely set fire to, burn the witch with all the trans activists. And then we had BLM.
Oh, yes.
So we had this kind of weird, and I just remember sitting there going, I don't know what fires to put out first. Because it just seemed like everyone had just lost their marbles. Don't you think?
They completely lost their
marbles. If you cast your mind back to the things that people did, do you remember the pots and pans outside the windows?
Oh, yeah, banging pots
and pans to support the
pans.
NHS. Yeah, and the toilet paper run.
Oh yes, do you remember
the fights over toilet paper?
I know, and it was so bizarre because I remember saying to a friend, let's meet up, and bear in mind, because I'd lost Terry, and actually my mum had been ill for a long time, God love her, and she went very early 2020. So she'd got worse and worse and worse in 2019, and then beginning of 2020. So I was sort of at the beginning of 2020, frankly thinking, well, maybe I should just, what's the point? Because and then the Corona thing came. So I was like, Jesus Christ, what is this? But I remember looking around and thinking, where's my tribe? Where's there wasn't anyone. You know what I mean? No. I didn't know the great people like yourselves that I know now, where I could go quick. With your sort of like, shit. What do I do? Let's meet and have a drink. And plugging into all the Telegram, the little Telegram channels and all those great pockets of common sense, shall we say, that we found. There wasn't any of that. I remember a friend of mine going, "Oh, sorry, I can't meet because we're not really allowed to." And I was like, "This."
You're going out of your bubble. Remember that one?
Or the bubble.
Stay in your bubble.
Stay in your bubble. Tell you what, you stay in your bubble.
Yeah, exactly.
Forever.
Yeah.
I'll tell you how mentally it was. We went up to Leeds once to do a TV show.
Yeah.
And we stayed in this very shabby hotel. Well, not shabby, but just an average hotel.
Yeah.
And I think we were probably one of the few guests in there. It wasn't packed or anything. We walked up to the reception, talked about breakfast. Yeah. And he said, well, if you want a hot breakfast, you'll have to eat it on your own in your room. if you want a cold breakfast, you could eat it in the restaurant downstairs. So they were in the third. Yeah, do you remember?
Yeah.
They were in the third tier.
So I actually said to him, I said to him, if I've got a croissant and I warm it, yeah. So I said to the guy, if I get a croissant and warm it up, have I got to go upstairs to my room? He said, yeah.
Just, I mean, utter nonsense, as all authoritarian regimes are.
Ooh,
just sort of comical, unless of course you're, sort of at the other end of it. I mean, honestly, some of the stuff, and I don't watch mainstream TV, but I only watch it on a Sunday for Columbo. For the reruns. Okay. So I mean, I'm a massive Columbo fan, so it's kind of like my therapy. Watching, even just with him in the background, going, "Oh yeah, another thing." I love it. Anyway, so I accidentally flicked over and saw Sunday Brunch. One of the awful cooking shows on, and they were all miles apart.
Oh yes, I remember this. Yeah.
This is like yesterday. I was like, what is going on? And then all kind of like, you can imagine they're in the green room all going, "Oh hiya, great to see you. Oh, it's lovely to see you." And then they're outside. It's like, so it's all just, isn't it, propaganda? What are they afraid of?
Yeah, I know. It's on something. The maddest thing that happened to us. We were doing a remote writing session with two guys in LA, and they sacked us because they didn't like our policy on masks.
Yeah,
it's a remote session.
So what they just
and they sacked us. Yeah, they did. They
because basically you weren't prepared to do the theatre
of
the kabuki theatre.
Yes, the kabuki theatre. Yes.
I mean, carry on.
Did you ever see the baptism with the water pistol? The baptism with the water pistol.
Oh yes,
yes.
The priest and the.
Yeah, I read that.
I know.
I read that was done by request as like sort of a joke, but I don't know if that's true. I don't. It's still mad.
I don't.
There were so many other mad examples. Yeah. Absolutely.
Still absolutely bonkers.
This is you on stage, and you're doing your version of Dolly Parton.
Oh, excellent.
Celebrities, people like I only found this out recently because I don't watch the news at all. But Dolly Parton was selling. There's actually a picture of her going, honestly, Google it. It's like, I just want to say to everyone, you got to have the vaccine. And here's a little song for you. Vaccine, 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 vaccine. And I'm begging you, please take the jab. You might get blood clots in your legs and fry your brain and end up dead, but I don't give a fuck because I've been paid.
People don't get that. That's true. She frigging did that.
Absolutely, she did.
Didn't she?
Yeah, she did.
She did it, yeah. And not just Dolly, but Elaine Page.
Yes, that's why you got another one. But I saw your.
Oh, sorry, I did it. Vaccines, but it's like it's so there are so many absolute. Yes. Well, as I don't know how much I'm allowed to swear on this, but
swear how much you want.
Okay. Well, you know that I'm building. Not building myself, but a wall.
We've got that clip. We've got that clip.
God, I'm gonna have no friends in the media left. Do I care? No. Not at all.
I seem to remember you said you'll be able to see it from space.
Yes.
Exactly.
Just like pan out, the Great Wall of China when you pan out.
Yes.
It's all pan in from like from outer space, and it's just going to be like Andrew Neil's face, just like an enormous sort of ham, angry ham.
Yes. Well, I saw today that Piers Morgan tweeted. He said that I'm very pleased that Rishi Sunak has become the Prime Minister because he's had my backing from the beginning. And I remember, I tweeted, I said, well, I'll try to get it. And just, I mean, a more toxic endorsement you can't imagine than having,
Piers Morgan
right behind.
Jeremy Vine, yes.
Oh, Jeremy Vine, what an absolute! I look at some of these, and actually, I was reminded the other day because I saw Edwina Curry's name circulating, shall we say, because she's back in the sort of like, giving her Topper's worth. And this was very weird because bear in mind, I haven't done anything like this before, but back in Easter 2021, I got a phone call saying, will you do a debate opposite Edwina Curry on Good Morning Britain? So I was like this, and you're going, what? Because people knew I was outspoken. They'd sort of seen the videos of me at marches or whatever at the end of 2020. And so I found myself 7:30 in the morning, like literally like this, going, crying with the matchsticks, trying to get with my phone, tuning in to the studio with Kate Garraway and the what's her name, Anne Advil, somebody or other, the co-presenter, and the resident doctor, and Edwina Curry. And it's the one where she says, I wouldn't sit next to anyone on a train who hadn't been vaccinated.
Right. Yes.
And then I'm on the other side going, but this is basically you're calling for for an authoritarian state to be created in this country, Edwina. How dare you? How can you literally? And then honestly, the stuff on the Daily, the Express about me the next day.
Right.
She is. Oh, she's a granny killer. Oh, she's not a scientist. She doesn't know anything about anything. She's just a big fat Canadian. And then I put, well, I might be fat, but at least I can lose the weight, and you'll always be a cunt. Was my reply.
Yeah, exactly.
But honest to God, guys, it was so absurd that this woman. So I want people like that to be held accountable for the things they said.
Yeah,
it's not like having an opinion on wallpaper or should we have a tax on certain things. We're talking about state saying something that is so contrary to anything sort of that mean that's good, that means anything. I've lost the train of thought there, but you know what I mean. Civil liberties, human rights.
Exactly. It always struck me. It was COVID-19 for some people was a bit like being drunk. It just revealed their true nature.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
So
that's a really good way of putting it, Richard. Yes.
So Andrew Neil was clearly an arse. So too was Piers Morgan. So too was Jeremy Vine. Too was. There's loads of them out there. Did Yasmin Alibi Brown was saying, well, I think they should wear badges if they're not vaccinated.
Yes. And everyone thinking, oh, hang on a minute, where have we seen that before? Historically. And then when we said all that, everyone going, oh, that's outrageous. Really? How dare you? And you think, hang on a minute, but in early 1930s Germany and Austria, that's exactly the kind of thing they were saying. They're casting suspicious eyes around, like,
exactly.
Jewish family.
Exactly.
So absolutely, the parallels are just there when people like them not.
Exactly right. Exactly. Yeah, and it's the creation of the other. That's what it is.
Yes.
And it doesn't really matter what the other is known for, but you create the other. It could be ginger people, it could be fat people, it could be. Doesn't matter. It's just once you start, they're the others, and you point at them, and they're the problem.
Did you ever see
slippery slope?
It is absolutely. Did you ever see that clip of the Pfizer? I said of the Kaiser Chiefs at Isle of Wight Festival. We call them the Pfizer Chiefs now. Yes. And they actually do this thing: hands in the air if you like Moderna, and hands in the air if you like Pfizer. And then, what do you think of the unvaccinated? Boo!
Dreadful.
Really, absolutely.
Like a rally.
Yeah,
literally like a rally. And that I was thinking, that photo. It does the rounds quite a lot. And it's of everyone doing. I won't raise my arm, because then you'll clip that bit. It'll be me doing a Nazi salute.
We wouldn't do that.
We wouldn't.
But we know what you mean.
We know what you mean.
Bloody would. No, you would.
Got that guy with his. I know what you mean.
Just for a laugh.
Guy with his arms folded.
Exactly. The guy with his arms folded.
I know exactly.
That if you put your camera into all of us lot, our sort of the group of us who've been very vocal. Yeah. We're all like this.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But it's how embarrassing for the Kaiser Chiefs. How awful. And Foo Fighters and Adele saying
Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just extraordinary. That guy you're talking about in Germany with his arms folded, he ended up in the camp.
I bet he did. Of course
did he? Right.
Yeah. I'm sure he survived.
Yeah,
I doubt that.
But the parallels were too obvious. I couldn't really understand why people couldn't see it. And I don't know how you feel, Abby, but I sort of felt that I no longer understood the country I was born into.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I've had a lot of that, especially over the last, because I'd say I'm broadly sort of small C conservative with a massive dollop of libertarianism.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact, there's probably more, to be honest with you, libertarianism, and then with a little sort of like a helping of small C conservative. If I'm being honest, but I don't recognise it, and I think it has. That's one thing actually that Terry did sort of instill in me, because he was always reading, absolutely just a voracious reader, and would sort of like go down the rabbit holes and go, because that was his thing, to go, oh, have you seen this about so and so? So he sort of I learned all about common purpose sort of through him,
right,
and
okay.
you know, and the whole sort of ramping up of communitarianism, and you know, which is kind of where we are now. You know, where it's the group versus the individual, and the individuals are getting more and more. Yes, exactly, sidelined. Yeah, which is terrible, as Jordan Peterson quite rightly says. You know, you can't have civilized societies where where you can't put your hand up and say, "Excuse me, I don't agree with that."
No, exactly. Well, did you see the footage from the Communist Party the 5-year conference that they have, whatever it is? You've got the previous chairman of the CCP was being dragged out by the army. You could tell he didn't want to leave. Have you not seen that?
Picked him up and dragged him
He
out.
was sitting there right next to Xi Jinping, sitting there right next on the front row, and so these people come up, these heavies come up and pick him up and take him out.
Well, I did see that. Is his name Who? Is it
Yes,
H-U?
it's Who. Yeah.
Yes. Who? What? Where? When?
Oh, yes, what? Where? When?
Yeah.
We're gonna go. We're gonna be cancelled for the Chinese.
Yeah, exactly.
Terrible Chinese gags.
What they obviously did was waited for him to sit down, because they must have had these feelings about it before the event.
Exactly.
And instead of stopping him going, they wanted him to be dragged out on camera.
Yes, of course, as a kind of show trial, as a warning. Is what. And do you think he was basically going to, was going to be like us and say, "Excuse me, Xi Jinping, I don't think that's right." Excuse me.
Because Xi Jinping has just voted himself another 5 years.
Has he?
Yes.
Yeah,
he's just voted. I think, or he's been voted another 5 years.
Yes, like all good dictators.
Yes,
voting himself. Oh, who shall I vote for? Me or me? I think I'll vote for me.
They always used to make me laugh with Idi Amin and the medals. He used to award himself medals.
He invented medal, award it to himself, and then cancel it.
Yeah, a bit like
I'm surprised he could stand upright. All those bloody hello, my name's Idi Amin.
Exactly.
He just crashes into the crowd.
One thing I want to ask you, Abby, about Terry, who worked within Number 10.
Yes, he did.
Thatcher,
yes,
and then for the Labour
and yes, Tony, so much to his shame, the New Labour. Yeah.
Yes, well, the Millennium, essentially PR for the Millennium Project.
Correct. Yeah, man, awesome.
But he left. There was something that he didn't like. Is that something you can talk about?
Yes,
or not?
absolutely. Yes. He he was a member of the Labour Party, because Terry was from a working class proud Geordie family, and so came to London when he was to go to college when he was 19, and then sort of got into PR, got into sort of communications. So he worked for everyone. He worked for loads of people, but including in political circles. In fact, one of his good friends was Steve Norris. Remember Steve Norris?
Yes,
who apparently was one of the nicest Tories. Yeah, really decent bloke. Anyway, he's gone. Sorry, Steve. Sorry, Steve.
You're a nice bloke. Fuck off.
You're not bloke. Piss off.
Steve from Mr. Norris.
Steve from Mr. Norris.
Actually, I do think, where the hell are these people? Don't you think? Oh God, I think it's like in a sort of camp somewhere. But so basically, so what happened was he worked for the doing the Millennium Dome stuff, and while he was working for New Labour, he observed what he said to me was the most grotesque, overt anti-Semitism he's ever. I mean, he said it was just so disgusting. So Peter Mandelson would walk out the room, and then people would just openly use derogatory anti-Semitic terms about Peter. And so Terry, when he'd finished the job, tore up his membership card and said, "I'm out.
Because
not going to go back."
The anti-Semitism stink went right through to Corbyn, didn't it? Right through to that period.
Yeah. And it was just he was really. See, the other thing that Terry said was he used to go to party conferences a lot, and he said, and this is, bear in mind, this is someone who was broadly on the left, although as he got older, definitely he was sort of, he was libertarian left, really. Terry.
I think that's
he where was I going with this? He said that the Tory party, the party conferences, by a country mile, the Tory one was the best fun. He said you go. He said I used to dread you getting the invite for the Labour Party. So, oh Christ, I'm going to be around people who are literally like this, going, "Does anybody want a vegan sandwich?" Oh no, I best not have another one. I've already had one sherry. Meanwhile, he'd go to the toilet. Hey, come on in, Tessa. It wouldn't matter where they were from, how rich they were, toffs,
right.
Everyone would be welcome at the sort of the parties or whatever. That doesn't mean that I like the Tories because I loathe them, what they've done to the country. I was
watching.
Go on. Talking of Tories, or some of them, this is your bit on the wall of cunts.
Oh,
it's a clip.
So I'm going to build a wall next to it. It's going to be called the Great Wall of Cunts. For people that said that unvaccinated people should be segregated and punished. Okay, so here we go. And if you've got any more to add, shout them out. Here we go. Andrew Neil. Yay! Piers Morgan. Yay! The fascist manslug. Yay! Jeremy Vine. Yay! The floral-shirted, lycra-shagging, jab-pushing twat. Dr. Sarah Jarvis. John Gaunt. No one knows who he is. That's fucking great. Lorraine Kelly, a.k.a. Lorraine for tax purposes. Dr. Hilary Shillery Jones. Ian Dale. Nick Ferrari. Carol Malone. Benjamin Butterworth. So I should say Benjamin Butterworth. Anne McElvoy, Esther Ranson, Edwina Curry, Dermot O'Leary, the Foo Fighters, Rage Against the Machine, Kaiser Chiefs, Jimmy Carr. That's all I've got so far. So
it's true.
And you know something? What was weird about that? Looking back at that gig, all of it was new. I mean, all the stuff I did was like la la la. I just thought, Abs, just go to this gig and channel your sort of rage, and so it was like so weird, but it was great because it was like very fresh and sort of like, oh, anyway, I've got this. So I literally, when I got the paper out, I was like, shit, oh yeah, I forgot about the Wall of Cunts. But you know something, all the comics on that night, it was really weird. It was like being, and I know you guys, you feel the same, when you're around people and you're like, it's like I'm speaking a different language. So I was backstage with these people, and it was like no chat about the last 2.5 years, nothing, all blue-pilled, all very, I'm going to do jokes about Trump, even though Trump wasn't in power still, but it was literally like, let's be really revolutionary and do jokes about Trump and how bad, but how great Biden is. But it was just like, it was just weird. It was like they hadn't looked behind the curtain like we have.
Yeah, exactly.
Very odd, especially for comedians, because you'd think that there'd be more people going, what's...
Yeah, no, I agree. The thing is, Abby, we've often said this, imagine what it would be like if this was happening in 1913.
With
no internet.
Yeah.
We would, imagine taking a smartphone to the trenches in 1914. Nobody would sign up.
No, they look at that.
They'd look at that. Fuck that. I'm off. That looks fucking miserable. That does.
Exactly.
So, in a way, thank God we've got this internet stuff to reveal. And there are lots of great doctors like Dr. McCulloch and Tessie Larry and all these people who've done some really, really great work. Robert Kennedy and Rainer Formich. They're doing some. They're doing some great work.
I really take my hats off to them. I mean, genuinely, I don't think. We know people watching this will, I was going to say, on our side will know the bravery that it takes to be in the medical profession and just to go, oh dear, you've made a terrible mistake. Yeah. When we know how many GPs and how many doctors. I mean, I got an email from somebody the other day who said, I'm scared to go to my doctor or even to go to hospital. Yes, because I'm not sure I'll come out.
No, but there's a lot of people that feel
We've heard that before.
Yeah, and my daughter's a doctor and didn't get jabbed, and she was ostracized, and now they're all over like a rash.
Can you come back?
Can you do double shifts, and can you do this?
Really?
Yeah. The whole narrative has changed. She just stood her ground and said, look, I'm just up for choice. My choice is not to have this. I'm not anti-vax. I just don't want it. And that was her position. And and initially they were aggressive, and then they backed off, and now it's like, oh, great, and she's doing doing what she should be doing. So I think there's obviously a bit of a change in at the front line as well.
What you touched on earlier, Abby, where you said, "Oh, you're just," you were saying people said, "Oh, you're just a comedian," all that kind of stuff. We had the same conversation with Bob Moran.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, lovely Bob. I love Bob.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah.
And he said, people say to me, "Well, I'm not listening to you about this because you're just a cartoonist."
Oh, God.
And it's a bizarre place that we've got into.
Yeah.
You can't talk about that because you specialise in that. You're a welder. That's all you can talk about.
Yeah. It was like sitting in a restaurant saying, so it's like sitting in a restaurant saying, "Excuse me, I think my steak's underdone, overdone." They say,
"You're not a cook."
"Are you a chef, sir?"
Are you a chef?
You go, actually, no. Eat the fucking steak.
Yeah. There's a fly in my soup. Don't worry, the spider on the bread will catch it.
That's good. I haven't heard that.
It's like one of those, you have to really go through the fly jokes to get to that one at the end.
That's a good joke.
Something, you're so right, because I was thinking one of my not nemesis but greatest disappointments, and this goes to the heart of what you just said. Douglas Murray, who I wrote a Substack article about. Oh dear, and Toby Young didn't like it very much. Bit tough shit, because everything I said I thought was accurate. Because Douglas said the reason I don't comment about the pandemic is because pandemics aren't in my wheelhouse. And I'm like, I genuinely don't understand, because it's like, well, murder isn't in my wheelhouse.
No,
but I can comment on it because I know it's morally wrong.
It's the same as like saying, well, grooming gangs aren't in my wheelhouse. Well, thankfully they're not, but I can.
I'm wondering whether that is Douglas just being a little bit fricked, as they say.
Yeah, it sounds like to me.
It sounds like
swerve.
a little bit of a swerve.
Yeah. A bit of a swerve, but it's quite interesting though, the people that have swerved.
Oh, well, we talked about the Corona swerve when you're walking down the pavement back in the day.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh dear, let's just make sure. But something, people still do that with me.
Occasionally they do.
I don't think it's anything to do with Corona though.
No.
They sure don't.
Yeah, talking about talking about nutters. This is you. This is you doing a voiceover on behalf of Carol Malone.
I just want to say, right, that fuck your human rights and fuck your bodily autonomy. You can fucking fuck right off, you fucking pricks, right? I don't care. Get jabbed, or I'll build the gulags myself with my bare hands and shove you in them. I don't give a flying fuck about principle. I don't care. It's a global pandemic, and all I'm going to say is I'm going to keep saying this like a bloody like a fascist stuck record, right? If you don't have the jabs, you're an idiot. I've had them. I've had 12. I didn't have to. I wanted, I wanted them, right? They jabbed me in the fucking eyeballs, right? So have them, even though this is a virus that poses very little risk to actually anybody, and the average age of death from coronavirus, right, is 82, which is actually higher than the average age of death normally.
I love the. I love that. That's a while since I've seen that. It's very funny.
Yeah.
I did that at about 2:00 in the morning. I remember exactly, and I was like, it was quite a prolific time for me, and I was literally like lying in bed going, fucking hate that woman, because she was always on doing that kind of thing, going, you should have them, blah blah, and I just went, and that was it. That was the take. So it was it was a bit of a not fluke, but it was just one of those things where I was like, oh yeah, I'm glad that was the take, because sometimes, as you know, the first take is the best one, isn't it? When
very often.
When the adrenaline's kind of pushing you.
Yeah,
oh God,
exactly.
Malone.
Don't.
Jesus Christ.
I like the eyeball bit too.
Jam me in the fucking eyeballs.
But the thing is, we're not far away from that, are we, with some of these people? They would have been clapping at the quarantine camp gates, going, yeah, get in there, you bastards,
Get in there. I mean, really quite terrifying, actually.
Yeah, completely.
That anyone that's in any doubt about the fact that civilians can also be part of authoritarian regimes, just have to read what's that famous book about all the ordinary men.
Oh yes,
men.
Yes.
It was literally they're bakers, they're butchers, they're just sort of like guys, ordinary guys, and they killed lots of Jews.
Yes, exactly.
Because they were like, oh, we're doing our duty for the state.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's very easy to slip into to sort of go, oh, but they're just like in the media. It doesn't really matter. They're not wearing a uniform. You don't need a uniform to be a fascist.
No, you don't. When it first happened, Fred and I were going for a walk down by the river, and coming towards us, jogging, was this woman who was puffing and panting, and
through her mask,
through her mask, and she shouted to us to get out of the way.
Get out of the way.
She was
get out of the way.
Yeah.
As if we were the one infecting her. Hold on a second, and you're the one spitting and gasping all over.
And you got a mask when you're
Yeah.
I mean, really,
and you'll probably collapse in a heat because you're not able to get enough breath.
Yeah.
But also those masks things is just so vile. I mean, I remember when my nephew had to go to hospital and him wearing it, and I just insisted. I said, no, don't wear the mask, because you won't be able to breathe. You'll be sort of like I'm lucky. Well, in the sense that I was so vocal with my sister. I've got 3 nephews.
Right.
I was so adamant.
Right.
That none of them should get. That I almost terrified my sister into into because I had to just say, do not do it, do not do it, do not allow them to do it. And actually, they've thank Christ, 3 of them have have escaped.
Right. Good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what makes me so angry about the whole thing is to do with what you were saying earlier about just people's lack of interest in finding out for themselves.
Yeah.
Their lack of wanting to to do a little bit of digging.
Yeah.
That's what drove me mad. For the second time, I'm reading John Kennedy's The Real Anthony Fauci, and
I must read that. Yeah.
It's a tough book to read. It's dense with information, but what it makes you realise is the level of deceit and greed and manipulation of trials and tests. It really is off the chart, and I think there will come a time when a lot of these people, particularly if the midterms go the GOP way, I think a lot of people are going to be hauled up in front of some kind of.
Well, that lady was on the EU committee from Pfizer.
Jay Small. Yeah.
Small, that's it. And she said we didn't test for immunisation. She said it. She says it.
Transmission.
Just extraordinary. And I was thinking about you, Richard, the other day because you mentioned your lovely partner who passed. And I was thinking about because years ago, so in the early 90s, our family friend Bob, from San Francisco, he died of AIDS. So very very early in the disease. And I was thinking, I don't say it strangely to say, but I feel quite privileged that because I used to just to have known someone that early on. So it almost made me get rid of any kind of fear because we used to sort of like I'd hug him even though he had the what do you call carcinoma, the patches, carcinoma on him. I never once ever gave it a second thought. Bob, he was man. I loved. There's only 2 people I really loved in my life: Bob and Terry. Those 2. And what Bob used to ring me when he was on that fucking AZT, which Fauci pushed the poison.
It was poison.
And he was in such pain down the phone. I used to have to, and it was appalling. So I want those people in prison, not just for this, for the COVID, but all of the big pharma.
Goes way back, absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And also, when I look back to how I felt at the time when Stuart was taking all his meds, I thought the people making these meds were doing their best.
Yes.
It never crossed my mind that they were having a bit of a scam.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Because why would you? You'd be like, well, you go to places, don't you, to get help.
Yes, and now I look back and I think, hold on a second, they knew this wasn't great. They knew that DDL probably wouldn't work. They did.
Yeah. And it's big for. I think that's the biggest thing that I think we've all of us collectively learned that big pharma. It's a crime. It's a syndicate of mass experimentation. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter about that. Yeah. Well, as long as we trial this stuff, doesn't really matter, does it?
No, exactly. And also, there's a strong element that's claimed of racism in it, because a lot of the expired drugs, off-the-label drugs that don't really work or whatever, are all just sent to Africa, India. I mean, I think they threw Gates out of India for malpractice.
That's right.
Right.
So it's and also the amount of money. I mean, Paul McCartney's worth about 500 million, and that's his whole life, right? That's changed to some of these people.
Yeah.
They'll once they've cashed their checks in on some kind of big PPE deal or whatever it's absolute mental money. It really is. And a lot of it is taxpayer money, American taxpayer money. Through
we have to wind this up, Abby, now.
Okay, my darling. I've loved speaking to you. Honestly, this is the best.
Otherwise, we won't be able to load the file.
It takes ages to load the fucking file.
We'll have to do it again.
I love you guys.
We'll have to do it again soon, and
we will.
And obviously, we'll be meeting at the the Backyard Comedy Club. Isn't it?
Yeah. We're gonna have a good few sherbets.
We are.
After
It's sold out, isn't it? I think it's sold out.
It's sold out in about 24 hours. Which is great, because obviously James Dellingpole and Dellingpole, but also there's an after party, and I have to say this is all arranged by Charlotte, Baroness of Burgundy, arranged it. Yeah. Because if it was left to James, we'd be like, Abby, can we use your front room? You know what I mean? So I have to say, Charlotte is she's on Twitter. What a legend!
Yeah, she's fun. No, we know Charlotte. She's lovely.
She's organised it, and God love her. So she's organised an after party as well. You'll be great.
Right.
It'll be fun.
All right, brilliant. Thanks so much for joining us.
I really enjoyed it.
We could have talked for bloody ages, so let's do it again quite soon.
Yeah.
Yes, we will.
Yeah. Lots of love. Thanks, Abby.
God love you.
Abby.
Love you both.
Take care.
Bye, Dan. Bye.
Thanks for the mugs. Thanks for the mugs.
Oh, pleasure, the mugs.
Yeah.
Hey.
Hey.